Mediterranean, that the religious side of that was still intact. I think that's what we're discussing as we close. So that's kind of where we're at. That was something I kind of never thought of, and I was like, so, you know, you start thinking about another thought I had. Just, you know, I guess Daniel was written, I guess, about 3,000 years ago, and you know, you start. I was like, how you can show that to, you know, if you was really in with somebody that's a non-believer and sharing with them and stuff, just show how, you know, we're even today parts of what's that? I don't like my even today that, you know, you talk about something going back all the way to Babylonian conquest of Jerusalem in 600 BC, that even in history, that's we're still attached to that. And I don't know, for me, that's just something that amazed me, because if I probably wasn't a science teacher, I'd be a history teacher, but then everybody said I was going to be a coach. Every coach is a history teacher, so I was, you know, I digress. But yeah, I enjoyed the history and that stuff like that. So basically, I think this week, Daniel's vision, as we kind of study it right here, we go from more of the what's going on here on earth. Now we're going to get more into the heavenly kingdom vision, and that's kind of what we get right here in verse 9. You know, as we kind of get into that, so it transitions and says, "I beheld till the thrones were cast down, and the Ancient of Days did sit, whose garment was white as snow, and the hair of his head was like pure wool. His throne was like a fiery flame, and his wheels were burning as fire." And, you know, as I said, I'm a science guy, but, you know, I'm not very good at literature right there, but I can read that, and what that does to me, for whatever reason, that's majesty. That's what speaks to me right there, is you know, basically, I can't put it into words, but that describes God. You know, I mean, I don't know. It just, I guess if you had to name how would you describe it, that would be pretty close to it. And it's one of those things, as we kind of look from our book here on page 181, as it discusses this, it got into something that really, and again, a lot of these things I feel like, I'll just share with you. I had, you know, with a job, I'm doing a job for Saturdays. I'm going to get paid to basically watch football and dad as I watch it. But I had a Zoom or video conference with a guy on Friday afternoon, and I just felt like, you know, he's not a football guy, but he's a computer guy. And he was like, "Hey, your knowledge would be 1% of the football knowledge of PFF, you know, because it's really technological." So I was asking him questions about the streaming thing I have to do, and I'm sure I was asking basically for him, the questions would be 1 + 1 is 2, basically, you know. It'd be like going up to Albert Einstein. I felt like I was going to Albert Einstein and asking him questions about algebra 1, you know. And so, but anyway, so I say that to say this, that for me, on what's discussed in page 181 right here, I may be the one that's behind on the learning curve here, but I had always wondered. I saw the different names to reference God: Yahweh, Elohim, Adonai, and I was like, you know, for us, God is God, and I always wondered why they had different names, and then I realized that they were referencing. After I read this, that it was just references to different characteristics or qualities. Like, for example, the Ancient of Days, you know, says that which, according, you know, it refers to the eternal divine judge that assigns power, but also judges. Yahweh, the eternal self-existing, faithful, covenant-keeping God of his people. Elohim, mighty, and Adonai, Lord, sovereign of all things of the universe. So I guess they had different terms there to describe it. You know, for us, God is all. I guess is that omnipotent? I don't know. Basically, it's all encompassing. You know, God is all those things to us, and so I mean, and as I tell the kids in my class this week, that was free, and so I wasn't part of the lesson. But yeah, so I just wanted to share that. So as we get to it right here, you know, as we look here with the verse 9, we look at Revelation 4, verses 4 and 5 right there. So we see that, and as we read that, it says, and round about the throne there were 4 and 20 seats, and upon the seats I saw 4 and 20 elders sitting, clothed in white raiment, and they had on their heads crowns of gold, and out of the throne proceeded lightnings and thunderings and voices, and there were 7 lamps of fire burning before the throne, which are the 7 spirits of God. So, so the question right there, and I guess I already answered it a little bit, but how do Daniel and John's visions of God's throne room help us better understand His holiness and His authority? So we got John's vision there in Revelation. We've got Daniel's vision there. So how does, I guess the question's right there. How is God's supreme authority being highlighted? How is His holiness being emphasized in those passages? How do we see that?
Why is always
Yeah. That's the first thing. I mean, that just always jumps out to me. And, we see the white, and then, what else? The white garments, and, what? Crowns of gold, and just everything, as I said, just majestic. Other things. Yeah, the lightnings and thunderings, and even the fire, and that kind of gets me. It kind of got me thinking as well. I guess the lightning and thundering and the fire, and I'm gonna get into that a little bit more here down the road. So we can see there but there's no doubt you can see how, and those two passages are running side by side, and just referencing those things. Go to verse 10, and now as we go there, like I said, we'll get there. So a fire stream in verse 10. A fire stream issued and came forth from before him. Thousands ministered upon him, and 10,000 times 10,000 stood before him, and judgment was said, and the books were opened. So first of all, when you have thousands of thousands, of course I did the math, and what's thousands? I'm talking about millions, so that's millions of those. Then we get 10,000s of 10,000s. All right, quit rolling me out. That's obviously that's actually billions. Yeah. I think so. 10,000, yeah, it's a lot. So we kind of look at that. So verse 9, as I said, as we said, all of this, and again, some of this is, as I said, I've learned more, since we had that Revelation study on Wednesday nights before and stuff. I'm still, I've said it before. It's one of those things as I try to figure it out at the end. I'm not worried about it because I don't take care of it. I still want to know how to kind of get it clear. It's just, I have a hard time remembering it. And you can help me out here, brother Nate. So verse 9, like I said, this is not the great white throne judgment. We're talking about the book that you gave me referred to, the judgment of the great tribulation and the second coming of Christ. Could you just kind of help me there again on as far as getting there in verse 9 and verse 10 and stuff, the setting for the great.
I beheld till the thrones were cast down. That's referring to when those kingdoms of the world are going to be destroyed during the tribulation, and then the ancient of days did sit. In this time is actually going to be the judgment. When you get on down to verse number 10, the 10,000 times 10,000 stood before him, the judgment was set, and the books were opened. Mm-hmm. That's the great white throne.
That's the great throne. Yeah. So that's, and that's kind of the thing there, which judgment's which, and that's another great white throne, like, for example, as a believer of Christ, I don't go before the Lord. Will I go before the great white throne judgment? No, that's what that's what those said.
You do not.
Yeah. Mine's more of here's your rewards, here's where
Yours is the judgment seat of Christ.
Judgment
seat.
That's
for the things done in his body as a child of God.
As I've gotten more into studying this now, that's kind of because to me, I guess when as a younger Christian, I like those are. I had those in my head as the same thing. Didn't realize that two totally different things, so,
and happens at two totally different times.
yeah.
The Bema Seat judgment, in my mind, the way I understand it, it happens right after the rapture. While the tribulation's going on down here, the Christians are being judged before Jesus up there.
Okay.
And the only way to have a short judgment, there's a way to have a short and quick one. That's to make sure your account is very short while you're here. So when you mess up, you seek forgiveness. You make things right. If not, you're gonna have a long list of guilt.
Yeah. So that clears that up a little bit. So for me, and again, as I said, I guess I'm the one that may be late to the party and all for this, but it's just one of those things where for a while I would study Revelations because it's scary. I mean, even though I had nothing to be scared about, it was frightening. It's, to me, it's frightening image. It's scary. And I shouldn't be scared. I guess like I said, it's just one of those things I'm sure.
For me, and maybe other people, it is difficult to understand a lot of the things. So that's not like I'm afraid of what's
I think for me,
more difficult than say reading James.
I definitely like reading the accounts of Jesus and stuff, just because it's, that's.
If you have lost loved ones, it's very difficult for you to do as you think about taking them go through this. If they're not get safe.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's part of it, and just, I don't know about, or it could have been you ever had, for me, I've been done something stupid in the car or something, veer over, and then 5 seconds later, meet a truck or something, I'm like, man, if I'd done that, same way, what if, it scares me to think, man, if I hadn't accepted Christ, this is what I would have faced, that, I'm saying near miss, but I guess that's the side of it, it makes it a little bit, and where, making sure all the friends and family and all them that we share with them, and they have the opportunity so we can all be together and for eternity. That's anyway. Gotta get off that because I'm about hope, I'm about love, and and anyway. Let's get back to it. Verse 10. The setting, as we said here, and we get to the setting here for the return of Christ to establish His kingdom. In page 182 in our book, there's something that this kind of gets into the fire thing. So I liked, it says, and this is quoting from the first paragraph under Daniel 7:10 there, it says, from the burning bush that Moses saw forth to the pillar of fire that guided the Israelites through the wilderness. Fire often represents the presence of God. Fire is also pictured as going before God as preparation for His coming. For me, that's something else I hadn't really thought about that. I always thought fire was more being usually destructive.
It's actually also a picture, a symbol of purification.
Okay, now I feel better because I had that thought. Maybe we can go before because fire purifies. As a matter of fact, of course, just and I share this with the kids when I teach environmental science. It wasn't until the 1950s, they realized that kind of, especially out west, that the natural fire, wildfires are actually, it's just part of nature's cycle to, replenish itself, I guess, for lack of a better term. So we think of it as that. Yeah, that's kind of the first thing. It's like, okay, so as we go forward, that's fire is an element of purification, or so anyway, it represents the presence of God. God, goes before God and prepares for His coming. So now we got Daniel 7:10 and Revelation, 2 verses here in Revelation that I found that has some connection. 5:11 through 14, and Revelation 20 and 12 right there. So as we kind of continue here with that on just some things as we look at it, we see a lot of especially the numbers jump out to me. I beheld and I heard the voice of many angels round about the throne and the beast of the elders, and the number of them was 10,000 times 10,000s and thousands of thousands, saying with a loud voice, worthy is the Lamb that was slain to receive power and riches and wisdom and strength and honor and glory and blessing. And every creature which is in heaven and on the earth and under the earth, and such are in the sea, and all that are in them, heard I say, blessing and honor and glory and power be unto him that sitteth upon the throne, and unto the Lamb forever and ever. And the 4 beasts said, Amen. And the 24 elders fell down and worshipped him that liveth forever and ever. And finally, in verse 20 and 12 there, and I saw the dead, small and great, stand before God, and the books were opened. And another book was opened, which is the book of life. And the dead were judged out of those things which were written in the books according to their works. So definitely, as you look at verse 10 of Daniel right there, you'd have a hard time if someone tries to tell that, there's no connection there. They got a hard argument right there because we see thousands and thousands ministering in the 10th hour. The judgment was set. The books were opened. And all that, like I said, is just we see that. And as I said, like that quote says, boy, I wish I'd written that down, but it's just like where Daniel kind of gives you the preview, where Revelation kind of takes it a step further with the actual step by step, almost right there. So from there, we go, keep on going right here. Now we get to verse 11. This is and this may be wrong to say it, but let me just go ahead and say, verse 11, I beheld then, because the voice of the great words which the horn spake, I beheld even till the beast was slain and his body was destroyed. And of course, that's referring to the little horn. And I always kind of just get, because I don't know, I just think of a lot of people in the education background, think of that little guy or whatever, it's kind of talks big, but he can't really back it up at the end of the day. So, I don't know. Antichrist, of course, but try to think of it like that. But obviously, here with that, that's referencing that. So as we look at it, it says the little horn, blasphemy and boasting, the loudest. And again, as we mentioned it last week, as we referring to the fourth kingdom and the Roman kingdom itself, the emphasis itself is not on the beginning of that kingdom, but the eventual end of that kingdom. And that's with, as we said, the end of the kingdom before Jesus comes, where nations and individuals kind of getting into, towards the Great Tribulation period. So, page 183 of our book is talking about this. The little horn, or the Antichrist, was boasting and speaking blasphemous words right here. And down there towards the bottom, it's an event that's referred to as what is called we'll put an end to what is called the times of the Gentiles. Luke kind of references our book 21-24 there, but this phrase refers to the Gentile domination of Jerusalem in a period that began with the Babylonian captivity. It started in 606 BC, and this time will last all the way through the 7-year future tribulation period, and ending with the second coming of Jesus Christ. So, and again, it's one of those things where another quote I wish I'd written down. It talks about like how was it put? It said it was basically referencing. It's like we shouldn't look at current events. That's all right stuff. I'm just going to have paper, pencil, all the time. But it's like it just basically was saying how quit trying to, I guess, make the events of right now. Quit trying to cram them into fitting into the prophecy. Just let the prophecy play itself out, I guess, it's kind of what it was right there. It's, people are saying this is that. I can imagine probably when World War II broke out, especially over in Europe, there was a lot of people thinking that could have been the beginning. I don't know. I obviously wasn't alive during that time, but I sat there and think about all. Every time something like that happens, even our book here, it mentions, terrorist attack. I can remember, when 9/11 happened right there, was this a sign of, is there something, wasn't near as educated then on this as I was now, but, it makes you pause and think, of course, like I said on Twitter and stuff, every time something, the world's coming, I'm just like, okay, I can tell by a lot of posts on Twitter, a lot of people haven't studied Revelation too much, because I'm like, no, that's not what it says. So anyway, but yeah, so it's just talking about here, in verse 11, as it gets into it, that, the empire, that second paragraph there underneath verses 7, where it talks about Daniel 7, 11, and 12, it says, the fourth beast, referring to the Roman Empire, revived in the end times and led by Antichrist, will be killed or destroyed, not by another nation, but rather as a result of divine judgment. The empire and its wicked leader, and the Antichrist will be divinely terminated. The Antichrist will be destroyed at Christ's second coming. And it kind of references there, in Revelation. Compare that with Daniel 2. So as we go from there, and we look at the 13, 5, and 6, we look at Revelation 13, 5, and 6, it says, and there was given unto him a mouth speaking great things and blasphemies, and power was given unto him to continue 40 and 2 months, and I remember studying that, looked it up. And he opened his mouth and blasphemed against God, blasphemed his name, and his tabernacle, and them that dwell in heaven. So, we see right there, what is the theme that both Daniel and John emphasize about the words of the little horn or the Antichrist right there? What seems to be what do they seem to emphasize? The blasphemy, the boastfulness. So it kind of goes back to all, you tie that back in. What was the problem with all the leaders that we've seen in Daniel is, besides the blasphemy and the boastful, what's the kind of been the key word we've been pride. Can be very, full of himself, arrogance. So all of that, we see that theme again. For me personally, it's like every time I start getting full of pride there, it just keeps reminding me I better watch myself, because it seems like everybody, for a lot of people in the Bible, pride is what gets it. You kind of get too, as my grandma used to say, you start getting a little too big from the britches right there, then I'm going to be put in a place. And this.
If you notice what's happening, Daniel is not in chronological order, this last section, but he's given snippets of what's going to happen to different groups. So it starts out as those that reject God, the great white throne judgment. Then it's the judgment of the little horn, which is the Antichrist. It's the words they speak in during tribulation, and then it says till he's destroyed, and then he's thrown into the lake of fire, which is after the great white throne. And then he goes to the rest of the beasts, and then it's just little snippets of the same thing.
So it's not, his emphasis on more is what's happening to the groups or the people, not necessarily the order of events, I guess. So, that makes it, now, that kind of makes it make a little more sense to me now, because for whatever reason, and that's, I guess, I've always been the most OCD person, but, man, I'm a big chronological order of events guy, and that's sometimes I have to stop and really think about that, how the Bible is presented. It's not necessarily, like we talked about this chapter 7, this happened before chapters 5 and 6, in Daniel. So, but yeah, that's I think that helps there. So we go to verse 12, and verse 12 just kind of mentioned, there's not really much, it's just mentioning on that. That there are going to be elements of the other kingdoms and some of their ideology, philosophy, even though they've been destroyed, it's going to live on in man's heart in the great tribulation. I kind of remember talking about that. It's kind of just, there's still going to be elements of of that there, I guess, you know, it's, when tribulation happens is, I mean, for those that are here, is it gonna be almost just like life as it's going on now, just, or how's that? I'm I'm struggling now with that.
The first 3.5 years.
Maybe I should just let you up here teach this, not just, because I need to take notes, so.
The first 3.5 years is gonna be better,
Yeah.
and then the last 3.5 years is gonna be worse than that.
So, you know, that's what I'm saying. I mean, it's not, you know, people still be driving around in cars, people still gonna go to the grocery store, just, you know, that's, I don't know, that sounds weird, but that's how I think. What's gonna be going on? Is it gonna be something where we go just, you know,
But we won't be.
yeah. And that's what I'm saying, is I'm just, the people that are here, what's gonna be happening? You know, is it just, where do all people, they're gonna be, where do all these people go? Where's, traffic sure is a lot lighter, I guess, I don't know, but I mean, but,
And I would say
and I joke.
given over a strong delusion.
Yeah.
So they will believe the lies, so they're gonna believe all that the little horn is saying.
Yeah.
They'll be deceived, everything's fine, normal, and
Yeah, just something, hey, there, whatever, so.
things are, they're gonna be peace.
See, I keep, that's where, I guess the point is, whatever I got, cause I'm just like, how do these, to me, it's like, I'm gonna notice if, I would notice if a bunch of people all of a sudden just were no longer around. And, you know, how's that gonna be explained to them, you know, I guess, power manipulation. All right, verse 13, the Son of God, we get there, so it says, I saw the night visions, and behold, one like the Son of Man came with the clouds of heaven, and came to the Ancient Days, and they brought him near before him. And on this one, you know, Son of God, you know, is invested with authority to take the kingdoms of the world from the Gentiles, and to establish his kingdom is kind of what, you know, some of the is referencing here, but if you notice here, I make a reference to Mark, where Mark is accounting Jesus is on trial. And I like this, and because what this is saying here, so we've been seeing a lot of what's happening here. Jesus basically, you know, asserting himself to who Daniel is in his prophecy, but he says this is Jesus speaking, should have had that green, should have that red, but he held his peace and answered nothing. Again, the high priest asked him and said unto him, Art thou the Christ, the Son of the Blessed? Jesus said, I am. And ye shall see the Son of Man sitting on the right hand of power and coming in the clouds of heaven. And there's also, I don't have it printed out, but if we go to Mark 13 and 26, and this is Jesus speaking, and then shall they see the Son of Man coming in the clouds with great power and glory. So another, you know, so we can see how, like I said, that being tied into Daniel, and you know, of course, after Jesus said what he said in verse 62, what happened in verse 63? That's where the high priest was so up that he said that he ripped the clothes. So, so again, from there, just some of the discussion here. I did now. Feel like I'm on TV now. Stuffing all my papers.
TV.
Oh yeah. But you know, of course, Daniel sees the defining figure, one like the Son of Man with the clouds of heaven, you know, and dominion and glory and the kingdom. So we see the everlasting dominion, the kingdom that shall not be destroyed. So we're seeing, you know, eternity. This is basically how, you know, just again putting the final affirmation of the eternal kingdom. And so that gets us to verse 14, and so from there, you know, in Mark, of course, like I said, just fulfillment, you know, we're going to see the everlasting kingdom revealed. So let's go to verse 14 on the back, kind of get this, we'll kind of tie it all together here, I hope, because I feel like I've been everywhere today, because, like I said, this is very difficult for me. I mean, just, I like it. I'm learning. Like I said, my biggest fear is just saying, being wrong. You know. So, and there's given his dominion, glory, and kingdom, and that all people, nations, and language should serve him. His dominion is an everlasting dominion which shall not pass away, and his kingdom that which shall never be, not be destroyed. And so Revelation 19, 11 through 16 right there, it says, "And I saw heaven open, behold, a white horse, and he sat upon him was called Faithful and True, and in righteousness he doth judge and make war. His eyes were as flame of fire, and on his head were many crowns. And he had a name written that no man knew, but he himself. And he was clothed with a vesture dipped in blood, and his name is called the Word of God. And the armies which were in heaven followed him upon white horses, clothed in fine linen, white and clean. And out of the mouth goeth a sharp sword, that with it he should smite the nations. And he shall rule it with a rod of iron. And he treadeth the winepress of the fierceness and the wrath of Almighty God. And he hath on his vesture, and on his thigh a name written, King of Kings, Lord of Lords." And then verse 20, or in 6 right there, "Blessed and holy is he that hath part of the first resurrection. On such the second death hath no power. But they shall be priests of God and of Christ, and shall reign with him 1,000 years." So, on on that, of course, obviously we see, that's a pretty powerful image right there of Christ's return, and that's that's just one of those people, whatever reason they say we whatever, show them that verse right there, and at the end it's just we'll see. So I guess for us, when we feel like evil or whatever's in the world, you think of that passage right there. In the end, it's going to be taken care of. And we gotta hang in there and just like I said, we just gotta have faith that at the end, Jesus will come. He's going to rule. But from that, also I reference Acts 1, 9 through 11, and we know that's, of course, that's the account of Acts where Jesus ascends to heaven. So we see right there that how this kingdom that Daniel promises in 7:14 is established and what it means for the believer. So in Acts, where I said Jesus' ascension into heaven in a cloud is a foreshadowing of his return, and we see right there if we read Acts 1 and 9 and 11. I can get to it right here real quick. It's right there. "And when they had spoken these things while they beheld, he was taken up, and a cloud received him out of their sight. And while they looked steadfastly towards heaven as he went up, behold, 2 men stood by them in white apparel, which also said, Ye men of Galilee, why stand here gazing up into heaven? This same Jesus which is taken from you into heaven shall so come in a like manner as ye have seen him go into heaven." So all these here we see with Daniel, with Revelation, and then finally the actual account right there of it's okay, I won't take it from you this time. That's got to stay in practice for school with you all. But we see there with Daniel and just how all that's it's all tied together, and it just it's not just like I said, we see the running the rope that ties it all together, right? How it's all connected with Daniel through Revelation, and then how when Jesus did ascend, the angels there, even just a small detail of adorned in white. We see how important that's been in the account of Daniel's account.
Must have been a journey.
But anyway, so Daniel's account that we see that I think they're adorned in white garments here. But I think that's important because that's another way to tie it into how what we referenced there in Revelation and in Daniel. So I guess right here, question I wrote down is Daniel gives vision. Kind of you know, we share the chaos, but he shares the peace. I guess that's a quick way to say that.
You always want to know if it's turning out good in the end.
Yeah.
You can get through the rough times if you know at the end it's gonna be okay.
Yeah, and I think that's a good point when we get that with the reassurance, and you know, and it's hard because, you know, the question I get a lot from either young believers or non-believers is, why does God allow all this evil to happen in the world? And, you know, it's like I always, you know, I'm not wise enough, but I just say that's just a product of the fact that by nature, as human beings, we're sin, we brought that into the world. So that's a product of us, and, you know, but I said, I do know this, I know how the story ends at the end, that when it's all at the end, it's gonna work it, you know, that's gonna be taken care of. But the problem is, and this goes all the way back to Abraham, as humans, we wanna operate on our timeline, not God's timeline. And that's, when we go on our timeline and instead, what happens? That's where we get in trouble. So, you know, think about, I've always said, when you think about Abraham going on his own timeline, do we still feel effects of that in the world today? Absolutely. You know, because turmoil and everything over the Middle East is what it comes from. You know, so
We kind of live in a microwave oven world today. We want everything right now.
I want it right now and I want it yesterday. So
And of course, I remember before microwave,
Yeah.
we had to boil things on the stove, or you had to heat up, and I remember when mother got me first microwave. Well, I bet that was just one, you could put a cup of coffee in there, and in a minute you had hot coffee.
yeah, it is. That's the. I posed that question. My science class, if all the, you know, it was funny. I shared the results with you next week, but give some time fellowship. The question I posed: if all of the technological advancements of the last 50 years disappeared overnight, how would it affect us? You know, and really what it is the fact is, if we didn't know about those technological developments, we wouldn't be affected. But it's like kids think we didn't have telephones or TVs in 1975. I was like, I did in Google Classroom, so I'd comment, yes, we did communicate. We just had to, you know, we had landlines. We did call each other. But it was just funny. But what you were, you know, what you're saying about that is just amazing now. It's like if it takes, for me, especially like the video, all we do with the football video now back in, you know, as a wife and coach, I'm sure you probably saw the old reels of film and stuff like that. Now it's like, hey, I hit a button, I want my film there in like 2 seconds. If I had to wait 10, I'm like, come on, you know, that little wheel on the computer spins for 5 seconds, I'm getting it. You know, it's just amazing how we can do it. But yeah, so sorry I butchered that all up right there, but that was I learned something from just saying it, so maybe hopefully you got something out of it. There's nothing else. We'll close with a quick word of prayer. Lord, again, we're thankful for this day, and thankful for all your blessings, Lord. Just thankful for just thankful for you and your salvation that you give us, Lord. That again, as we study these events, Lord, that we can have the peace of mind that by knowing you, Lord, that we'll just give you the trust that we're going to be taken care of. And Lord, as we go through today, Lord, and go through our worship service, be Brother Nick brings a message, Lord. Lord, be with each and every family here. Be with those who may not be able to be here for that reason, whatever reason, Lord. You know that, and Lord, give them comfort where they need it, Lord. And again, we're just so thankful for your blessings.